Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. Rob Staton, Adam Nathan, and Robbie Williams, who has bravely jumped out of his sickbed to join us here today. I have absolutely no idea what to say about that game, guys, other than I was not planning on drinking alcohol, but cheers, I am drinking alcohol because I think it's required after that. So, Robbie, I'm going to let you just start. What are your thoughts after that?
Great first quarter. Came out, the first two drives were amazing. The throwback uniforms are fire, and I loved it. And I loved the throwback stadium look. And then the last 3 minutes were great. Other than that, not much else to say about that game.
Well, it's just crazy, isn't it? That they came flying out the traps. I'm thinking, wow, look at this. We look really good. 17-3 or whatever they were leading after the first quarter. And you're thinking, this is great. The Niners are starting off badly. The Seahawks look great. As you mentioned there, Robbie, the uniforms look fantastic. I'm thinking, God, can't we have these every week? Everything is well with the world. Big smile. Little did we know as the commercial break began at the end of the first quarter that was going to be it until the last minute of the game, Adam. I mean, it's hard to know how to. I mean, look, I'm absolutely delighted that they won. That's the first time I've got excited in a while, and I'm tempted to just ride that emotion for the rest of the night and the rest of the week, and I'm just look at the NFC West. Maybe send a picture of the NFC West to some of my 49ers supporting friends after this stream, and just roll with it. But there is also, I do feel like we need to discuss a little bit of some of the issues between quarters one and the last minute. So just sort of give us a reflection on and your immediate thoughts after that game.
One of my favorite football journalists was at a big soccer game, and it was a last minute winner that completely changed the game. And he'd written his introduction as if the team that was about to win was going to lose, and he put it on Twitter to show people what he'd written. And oh my God, I had to rip this apart and start again. And I'm sitting on the couch watching the game, and I'm thinking, oh my God, we've got the show after this. We don't look good, but at least we're going to have an hour of a moan basically because we've not played well and we've lost. And then they win, and I'm thinking, well, what the hell are we going to talk about now, and how are we going to phrase it? Because I don't really know how to approach it. As you say, obviously it's fist pumps and jumping around the couch and the living room when they win. But then, I don't know, do we just then discount all the stuff that we would have spoken about had it not been for the first successful screen pass since those throwback uniforms were actually the original uniforms, working for Seattle? I don't know what to say. I mean, I'd rather be lucky than good, I suppose, when it comes to the short term. And in the short term, I think we should be thrilled to get the win. In the long term, are there maybe a few more issues that, keep cropping up? Yes, that we probably need to get into. But I don't know. We are top of the league, so we are top of the league. I don't think we can complain too much.
I'll celebrate that. Hey, we're tied right now in first place. Let's go.
Yes. Well,
as ugly as it is, it doesn't matter. We're tied in first. Let's go. Right. Well,
I'd also like to toast the fact that the Niners have lost 3 games in a row.
That's great.
So cheers.
Team cheers, everyone. Team cheers.
Ching chin.
Ching.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So hang on.
First place, and if it's ugly, it's ugly. It doesn't matter. We're winning.
Yeah, who gives a crap? The Niners have lost 3 games in a row. It's absolutely hilarious. Imagine what the meltdown that they're all going to be having now on their side of the world, and that's fantastic. And the fact that they have won is something to treasure. And look, even when it was ticking down at the end, and they were, they had that just before their interception at the end. It was getting to that point. Wasn't that like a 3rd and 3 or something to win the game effectively, or something like that? So I'm just looking at that, thinking we haven't been able to stop them all day. This is no way they're going to get. This is it. The game's pretty much over. And it wasn't just that the Seahawks got to stop. I mean, look, the Browns had 385 yards on offense today. So it didn't feel as if they were going to 5 yards per play. So it didn't feel as if 3 yards was going to be a big issue for them. And not only did they get the stop, they got a turnover, good field position to start that final drive. Geno Smith tried to throw another interception into the end zone. And you're thinking, when he threw that pick, not that pick, that bad throw that was underthrown to DK in the end zone at the end, I thought they might just win this game now, because if that it was tailor made for that to be picked off, and that was how it was going to finish, and they got away with that. A bloody screen, a wide receiver screen. How many crap wide receiver screens have we seen over the last decade? And they actually won them the game today. Unbelievable. So, and then a good stop at the end. I never really felt they were going to go 75 yards to win it at the end there. But wow, they actually managed to find a way. Although, having said that, there's often something that you could say, well, this player or this unit played well, and it does feel a little bit challenging to come up with those kind of answers today. So what I will start with is Jamal Adams' header, because you and I, Adam, big English football fans. If Jamal Adams had leapt like that and cleared a corner kick away with a header like that, it would have been a stand-up. Yes, well done, good header, son. Well done, mate. So that was a great defensive header, which led to an interception, wasn't it, Adam?
So straight after that, I tweeted out Jamal Adams is 7,384,000% chaos. And sometimes it just happens that he charges out and flicks on a header to his defensive back pal. I mean, he is a madman. He's a lunatic. And I think, as a pod, we've said what we're going to say about Jamal. I think we need to embrace the chaos when it comes to him, because he is a complete one of a kind. He's like an excited Earl Thomas. And I think that says an awful lot about him. He's a lunatic. And sometimes he's going to charge up and head the ball 25 yards in the air for Love to come down and catch it. I mean, of all the bonkers ways that I've seen Seattle win a game before, that is, yeah, that's one of them. Madman, absolute madman. And he'll probably say he was watching the Sounders, doing some pre-match warm-up, and he thought that's a good idea. So I gave it a go, because he's crazy.
Big Ange would have approved, would he?
We're more of a, ticky-tacky keep the ball on the deck kind of team. But there was a bit of a Christian Romero about it. And he from one madman to another. Well,
Robbie, it was I don't think that justifies anything in terms of any of the criticism of the trade over the years, but it was a truly bizarre, unique way to turn a game, him heading that ball into the air for Julian Love to catch.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes in sports, just weird things like that just happen, that just the ball bounces your way somehow and allows you to win a game. I'll take it.
We've got a few super chats coming in. If you want to post a comment on the screen, if you have a question, usual stuff, best way to get them involved is with the super chats, and it helps support the channel. So David says, what team has a better perimeter unit than Woolen, Spoon, and Brown? Geno isn't the answer, but is Shane play calling a part of the problem? I will warn everybody now. There will be a section, and it may last 10 minutes, where we talk about Geno Smith and the offense. So there's your trigger warning to those people who don't enjoy that kind of stuff, but it will come. David, I promise we will get onto that. On the perimeter unit with Tariq Woolen, Witherspoon, and Trey Brown, it's a very good trio, isn't it, Adam? And that is a strength, and there is depth there, obviously. They didn't feel like a huge part of the game today, because like Woolen could easily have had an interception at the end to end it, and I don't know what happened there. They didn't even show a replay of that. It kind of just went through him, it felt. People are complaining about the refs, and there were some calls in the game that you just think, what are the refs doing here? Just back off. Just don't get involved, refs. You don't need to throw that flag. But then at the end, the hands to the face, if Tariq Woolen's going to put his hand in someone's grill, he's going to get flagged for that right in front of the refs, and that extended a drive when Seattle were off the field at that point. So so there was some, but I guess the point that David's making, Adam, is it is a talented trio of corners, isn't it?
Yeah, and if anything, I probably thought Woolen underperformed to what we would expect normally from him. I thought there were at least one pick that went through. The penalty was frustrating. I think when it comes to the refs, had we lost the game, we probably all would have said the refs were annoying, but probably not the reason they lost. I think that Seattle would have done enough bad stuff themselves to have cost them the game as opposed to the referees. Spoon seemed quieter. I think the commentators even said, we haven't said Devin Witherspoon's name an awful lot, and Trey Brown had a couple of nice plays. But we've said that, all season and off season that where they're building, they're building 3 or 4 real positions of strength, and that's certainly one of them. And team speed is up, and I think it's almost led from those guys sort of from the outside in that are really being like the tempo setters from this team, which is great to see from such young guys who are, learning on the job and being incredible assets for the team at the same time.
Robbie, quick thought on the quarterbacks.
Yeah, the only thing about Rick Willen, I know a lot of people. I've seen a lot of comments, on Twitter and stuff, just being a little down on him this year, just overall in general with his play. And he seems like he's given up some more yards and more penalties. But I just kind of remember that he over exceeded last year our expectations. And I think he's still kind of coming to his own as a player. The second year, a lot of people have those sophomore slumps. So I'm not really worried about him at all. I think he's got all the talent in the world. And I think we've got the trio of guys that you just talked about. They're really exciting, and it's going to be a nucleus for this team that we're going to build around. So I'm really excited about them.
Someone has just sent me a tweet. Oh my God! Do you know if there's one term that I would ban immediately from the Seahawks sphere? It's confirming your priors. Is this something that people in America say a lot, Robbie? Because I never hear it over here.
No, I don't really hear it.
Listen, because it's a tweet relating to Geno Smith. It's completely sidetracked me, and I'm sorry to go on a complete tangent here. But people criticizing Geno Smith when he's got 8 touchdowns and 6 interceptions and he's making mistakes is not confirming your priors. It's just called analyzing what's going on and having an opinion. And sometimes you are right, and there's nuance with debates, but you can talk about things without having to be labeled as confirming your priors. Just shut up, for God's sake, with that stuff. Taker610 says, Robbie Williams from Take That. Wow. Robbie, I think we've mentioned this to you before, but there is a very famous British singer called Robbie Williams.
I know who he is, but I don't know what Take That is.
It was the band that he was in initially, and then he went on to have a solo career.
It's like a boy band?
It was a boy band from the 90s. They're still around. They're more like a man band now, or an old dad band. They've just brought out another album, and they play it on the radio station I work for all the time, and it's quite upsetting to hear it every day. But they exist. Robbie Williams is not part of the band anymore. He left in the 90s to have a very successful solo career. But
I know his name. I know who he is. Yeah.
So yes, it's not that Robbie Williams, but if the Robbie Williams is a Seahawks fan and ever wants to join us, he's more than welcome. Blitzy says the Seahawks showed some grit today on both sides of the ball. A come from behind win versus a good team is nothing to blow off, even with the wars. I agree, Blitzy. I think it's a fair point. They did show some grit and some fight, and they got the job done. And ultimately, it is tough to win in the NFL, and the Browns are a very well coached team, I'd say, on that evidence on offense. With probably, I'd say, I don't know, is it a controversial thing to say that Myles Garrett might even be the MVP of the league up to this point? I mean, he's played that well.
He's that good. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to say that. Yeah.
I mean, who on offense is playing better than him? None of the top quarterbacks are playing well enough to be MVP, are they? Mm-mm. There's no running back who's. For me, it's between. If you were to say who's your MVP of the league right now, it'd be Tyreek Hill or Myles Garrett for me. I don't even think I could put anybody else in.
Maybe McCaffrey.
Maybe McCaffrey. Yeah, maybe Christian McCaffrey. But he plays for the Niners, Adam, so it doesn't count. So anyway, Odium says, first live chat I've been able to make. Thank you all. My in-laws are from Cleveland and are huge Brown fans. Oh, it's a shame for them. I can't stand my in-laws. I'm very happy right now. Cheers all. Well, cheers, Odium. Cheers. For the comment of the season, that will not be topped at any point. That is the best super chat anyone has ever sent. I shall read it again. My in-laws are from Cleveland and are huge Brown fans. I can't stand my in-laws. I'm very happy right now. Oh, that's amazing. Well done.
So it's funny. My boss is actually a big Cleveland Browns fan, and she messaged me like, I don't know, not that long ago, before the interception and before we came down and scored, and she was like, "Go Browns!" And I was like, "I'm not saying anything yet." So it's awesome.
Mike's got in touch. He says, Will Levis, 19 of 29, 236 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 130.8 passer rating. Russell Wilson dominates Patrick Mahomes. City crush United. A great weekend. Well, look, I mean, I can't say I had a dog in the race in any of those. City crushing United is probably up there with whoever won the World Darts Championship for me last year. Russell Patrick Mahomes is in one of my fantasy teams, so I'm quite disappointed by that. And apparently he was sick or something in the game.
But would you say that Will Levis has confirmed your priors, Rob?
Oh, that's a good point, Adam. And when he plays badly next week, I shall put a tweet out saying, you're all confirming your priors by complaining about him. Look, Will Levis played fantastically well. I did keep an eye on that game in the early slate because there wasn't that many interesting games. And he had one bad throw in the whole game, and it was practically flawless. What I will say, though, is it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that he should have been taken earlier. It doesn't mean that he's a franchise quarterback. It doesn't mean that he's going to be a success. All it means is he played well against Atlanta on his debut. Hats off to him for that. Now the rest of the league have got tape, and he's not. We have to be honest here. That was quite a basic game plan from Tennessee today, and Atlanta aren't a great team. So perspective, but a very good start for Will Levis. There's no way he should have lasted as long as he did, in my opinion. He did. And he played very well today. So we'll see if he can follow that up. There's going to be a lot of pressure on him now, though, after that debut. People are going to be Tennessee fans, probably not as, were all over the place as some others. But like if he'd have done that in Green Bay or somewhere, they'd have been anointing him the next bloody Brett Favre or something. So I don't think that it will be too much for him, but following that up is going to be difficult. David says Jamal's heading is improving. It is that, and that I did think to the other header he's had in his Seattle career during that the interception that he headed clear rather than caught. This was a better outcome this time, so well done to Jamal. 12th Man North says Seahawks running backs average more than 9 yards per carry. What do you guys think about the fact they only had 13 carries combined? This pissed me off. That's what I think about that 12th Man North. Robbie, what did you think about that? Because there was what I was going to say, Adam, is when you were talking about that article, I'm happy at some point to read out the 833 words that I am never going to publish as my sort of post-game article, which was finished just before that interception from Julian Love. I'm happy to read it out if people want to hear it. Let me know in the comments whether you do or not. But one of the things I
release
argued,
the tapes.
Well, there was one thing I want to say from the article, which still is true, even if I don't read the whole of it. I want to read this out, that when they had the second interception from Geno Smith, that was his 26th throw. And at that point, Ken Walker had 6 carries and Zach Charbonnet had 3. And Curtis, in his write-up, a brilliant preview, you should read them every week on game day, highlighted how the Colts had a lot of success against Cleveland last year on offense, because Minshew only threw the ball 27 times and they ran it 40 times. They gained 168 yards and 3 touchdowns on the run. Curtis said, make sure you have a 23 pass, 40 run day. And what they ended up having was the complete opposite of that, which is bad in terms of a game plan and Shane Waldron. So, guys, what do you think? Either of you can jump in. And what did you think about that?
Well, yeah, I think the earlier super chat that someone put in, was David or someone that says something about Waldron. I really think Waldron is. I haven't really been a big fan of what he's been doing the last couple games. I think the red zone issues. I mean, a lot. You can point it to Geno for sure, but you can also, I think, you can just as easily point the finger at Waldron. I just think this game plan and the some of the play call they just don't make a whole hell of a lot of sense, and you have to wonder, like, at what point does that become a major issue? Because we're winning, but we could be winning by a lot more, and with just the right play call, because the personnel is there, I think. So, I mean, you can make it easier on Geno as well. I just think the play calling has been garbage.
Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anything really. I'm not knowledgeable enough about the game to come on here and start blasting coordinators for what they do and don't do. I think you can only go on feel, and it was almost like that the Browns came into this game with such a vaunted defense, apparently, or everyone was talking about them as the best defense in the league, that it almost felt like they didn't expect to get anything out of the run game, and so whenever they did, it almost caught them by surprise, and they thought, well, it won't happen next time, but it did, and then it won't happen next time, and it did, and it was almost like they should have stuck with their convictions a bit more of what was actually working. It felt like they were perhaps slaves to their sheet more than they should have been what was actually unfolding in front of their eyes. But again, it would be disingenuous for me to come on here and start macking on offensive coordinators because, I don't really, I don't get enough of a feel for it when it comes to that. I don't think.
I mean, neither do I. I consistently say I'm not an X's and O's person. It's never really interested me becoming one of those, and would never claim to be. But it just seems, when I don't think you have to be. When Curtis lays it out as well as he has done, look, the last team that played this great defense scored nearly 40 points. Here's how they did it. They ran the ball a lot, and they had this much success, and they managed their passing game appropriately. And Seattle does the exact opposite of that the next week, and they rely on a great amount of fortune at the end to win a game where they couldn't move the ball for 3 quarters. They didn't score a point from the first quarter until the very last minute of the game. I don't think you need to be an X's and O's expert to know that was ridiculous. Like, run the ball. I mean, the penultimate drive was a great example of this. Zach Charbonnet gets, he took a pass onto the outside. I think it was a pass, or was it a run? I think it was a run, and Will Disley did a great job blocking the edge. Then he has an inside run, and Seahawks are in position to drive for a field goal at this point. And then what did he do after that? A false start, a bad throw from Geno where the ball just flutters out of his hand, and then a sack. That's just, how did they get to that? Like, just run the ball at that point. You had like 6 minutes left in the game. You're running the ball well. Why go away from it? And why not just lean on the run? And this is what's frustrating with his team sometimes, is that Pete constantly talks about wanting that to be a focal point and identity. And yet so often they refuse to do it. Like, and today it was staring them in the face. This should not have been a game in any way, shape or form, because they were never chasing the game. They were behind by 3 points at most. And Geno Smith's thrown it 37 times. Ken Walker's had 8 carries and Zach Charbonnet's had 5. 13 carries in the game. That's not good enough as a game plan and as an offense. And for me, I'm utterly unconvinced by Shane Waldron. I do not think he's the answer. So sorry if people disagree with that, but I don't think you can have whole halves like they had against the Rams in week 1 and against the first half against Carolina, the second half against the Bengals, most of the game today. You can't have games like this where you're playing this way. You can't. It's too streaky. It's extremes. It's not good enough. Will says, obvious offensive issues, but 24 points on the best D in the NFL is okay. The strong start made me expect much more, though. I think that's, if people are going to, I'm sure people will lean on the fact that he got 24 points against a good defense. But again, lies, damn lies, and statistics. They didn't score a point for 3 quarters. Save the Geese says, what a win. Stressful, but this team is so young. Thanks for all these super chats, by the way. And James says, would you still draft a quarterback next year? Yes. I mean, look, we need to see who declares. We need to see what the draft position is. We need to see who else is going to be in the market for a QB. We need to learn. I personally think that Spencer Rattler is playing fantastically well, and maybe we'll talk about that at the end. But at the moment, no one's talking about him. But if by the time I get to April, if everyone's talking about him, then he may be out of range. So then we have to have a conversation about, what you want to do about that. If no one talks about him and he ends up being there in day 2, then great. You could get a great value pick, in my opinion. So would you still draft a quarterback next year? Yes. And he's not the only option either. There's a handful of options. And Tyler says, what's your favorite bicep workout? I'm a very classical trainer. So my favorite exercise is just a dumbbell press. My second favorite exercise is a tricep curl, just over the head and while lying down. Our favorite bicep is simple bicep curl. I don't think you need to go beyond the basics. Your basic workout is the best. And here's me wamping on about that. And we've got a CrossFit expert in with us, Robbie. Robbie, what is your favorite bicep workout?
Maybe a hammer curl. I like a good hammer curl. But yeah, I'm more of a CrossFit guy than doing a traditional just weightlifting.
Well, I mean, to go completely off topic, my office is ready, and I'm hoping the next stream will be in there, and it's a half office, half gym. So I'm actually going to go in there after this and have the TV on with the late game, which is a crap game, and I'm going to have it on anyway, and have a little bit of a workout. So, although I've said that I'm drinking wine now, so maybe not. But anyway, that was the plan originally. But the game and the wine has taken over. Okay. Let's just talk about Geno Smith, because let's get it out of the way and have a conversation. And people join in. Thank you for the super chat so far. Massively appreciated. If people want to send any more in, you want to join in with the debate. David's asked about the boxing. We'll go on to that. We'll go on to that in a second. But I want to talk about Geno Smith. So this has already become the latest thing that Seahawks fans are going to go to war over. And I don't want to accuse anybody of anything, but I'm going to, well, actually, why am I even saying that? Because I'm going to do it anyway, right? There are certain people online who talk about the Seahawks who are they just divide everybody up. They constantly have to pick an argument, hammer it home, argue with people about that topic all of the time on Twitter. And it creates us versus them within this fan base. And I'm fucking sick of it. I really am. I am so tired of this BS. I've had enough. I never tweet about the Seahawks other than to post links and some in-game stuff, which is always reactionary. Hey, Jake Bobo scored. Amazing. Oh, that's an awful interception. Geno Smith's not playing very well. It's stuff like that. But after the game, I don't tweet. I just send my links. If I want to say something about the Seahawks, I'll throw down 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 word article, and you can read it or not. It's up to you. I don't care. If you want to read it, thank you. I appreciate that. If you want to leave a thought in the comment, go ahead. If you want to disagree with me, as long as you keep it civil, I don't mind. As long as you're open-minded and don't insist that you are right, that's fine. But these people who go on Twitter and have to go, okay, all of you who are criticizing Geno Smith right now are confirming your priors, and here's this, and this, and no, and I think this, and you've got to accept this. And no, just stop it. This is so toxic. This is why our culture is crap. It's like this about everything, whether it's politics, sport, or whatever. We have to divide each other into opinions on teams and just go to war with each other. And I am friggin' sick of it. So let me just say that right off the bat. We can sit here right now and say, Geno Smith started the game well, but then played like Geno Smith has for the whole season. Streaky AF. He was really bad for a portion of this game. It's not all his fault because the play calling didn't help him. But the man has thrown 8 touchdowns and 6 interceptions through 7 games. And in anybody's language, in anybody's currency, that's not good enough in 2023. It ain't 1991. Your quarterback has to be better than 8 touchdowns and 6 interceptions when he has this assortment of weapons, this level of investment in your offense, skill positions, and offensive line. I know the offensive line has been beaten up. He still had a top 10 pick out there at left tackle today. He still had a second-round pick. third round pick Damian Lewis at guard. They've invested in that line. He's got a lot of weapons to throw to, tight ends, receivers, running backs. He has to do better than this. And since the Tampa Bay game last year, he has, I think it's a 26-14 touchdown to interception ratio, and it could have been more turnovers. That pick at the end zone at the end could have been a turnover. The miscommunication with Jackson Smith and Jigba earlier in the game could have been a pick six. So can we just accept right now that he isn't playing well enough to be anything more than maybe the man for today? I don't necessarily think Drew Lock will be better, but that's it. That's it. He's just a guy who happens to be starting now. And if we're being really honest, they have to find the guy who's going to start for the long term. Robbie, your thoughts on that little soliloquy that I've just delivered there?
No, I totally agree. He's a middle tier quarterback that's just not. I mean, listen, at the end, towards the end of the game, there's somebody, I don't remember who it was, if it was Ward or whoever it was, had an opportunity to pick six and take it to the house, and that would have ended. That we would have lost the game. There was no coming back from that. Dropped another interception. He's one of the more lucky quarterbacks, and if all these interceptions that get dropped, I think if those were catched or have been caught and whatever had happened, you're looking at a very different stat line. And people like to throw the stats out like, well, he still threw for 254 and 2 touchdowns today. I mean, and that's fine, but he's just not like, he's just middle of tier. But again, they're going to say the other thing, well, we're now the second best team in the NFC. So, there's a lot of things to throw out there. I mean, but you're 100% right. We need a quarterback that's going to be the long-term answer for the next 10 years that we know that can, I want a quarterback that's a game changer, and he's just not it.
The thing is I'm not saying that he's awful I've never said that. I've never said that he needs to be benched for Drew Lock. I don't want him to be benched for Drew Lock. I think if Drew Lock was better than Geno Smith, he'd be playing already. I just want us to be honest about what this is. He's not going to be worth $33 million next year. He's not going to lead this team, in my opinion, to the Super Bowl, which last time I checked, that's what we all want this team to do. So we have to look beyond that. I'm happy for him to be a bridge. I do think that if beyond this year, you could probably find a cheaper bridge quarterback, quite frankly, who can do what he's doing. I mean, let's be right here. Could Baker Mayfield quarterback this team for whatever he's on in Tampa Bay to an 8 touchdown, 6 interception first 7 games? Yes, I think he could. And there are other people who could do that as well for a fraction of the price. And if we approach it as, okay, Geno's a bridge, you have to then sort of go, well, what's the value to having him versus somebody who's on a fourth of what he's on? So these are all things that you have to discuss and contemplate. I am happy for him to be the quarterback this year. They've made that commitment, fine. But next year, we need to have a conversation about his contract, and we need to seriously consider drafting someone for the future, and we need to consider whether he is the right bridge quarterback on the salary that he's due. This all seems perfectly fair to me, Adam.
Yeah, I think actually the social media thing is quite a good way to start, because there are some people who are so staunchly pro and some people who are so staunchly against and will tweet and tweet and tweet and tweet their views without budging, that we can probably find that the truth is somewhere in the middle. And obviously all I can really do is go on my feelings watching the game and what am I sort of watching and feeling when every drop back comes. And I was pretty bullish after the Bengals game on the show, saying that I thought that if the chips fell in the right way, Geno could take us to a Super Bowl. And I think he's a bit of a Goldilocks quarterback in the sense that if it's not too hot and not too cold, if everything's just right, then he could be the guy to take you sort of where you want to go. And that's obviously a negative in one capacity, but then there's so many of those in the league at the minute. I mean, I'm looking around, watching Red Zone today. Mahomes had a bad game. We'll throw that one out because he's maybe the best ever to do it. Had a bad game, but outside of Mahomes and Burrow, you've obviously got Allen and Justin Herbert that are obviously very good quarterbacks as well. But I don't think there's anyone outside those top two that I would absolutely be confident they could drag my team exactly where they want me to go. So there is that, in the sense that whilst I'm not thrilled with Geno, I'm not looking around with sort of green eyes of envy at that many teams in the NFL right now, thinking that they've got a hugely better situation, albeit they are paying Geno a fair bit. They might have to pay him even more if they want to keep him. So that's one thing. But I don't know what you guys think, but up until today, I was pretty confident watching us on offense and thinking, drop back, throw, catch. Today was the first time where I started fearing the worst on every drop back. Like, this isn't anything tangible, just watching it in the second half. Every time I saw Geno drop back, I thought this is going to be a pick or a turnover of some sort. And that's not happened to me watching Geno at all. I mean, there was a bit at the back end of last year where he wasn't having his best time of it, but you thought, that's just, it is regressing a little bit. But today, for the first time, I feel like I lost my top layer of confidence in Geno as a quarterback. And I think that's quite a hard thing to get back.
Yeah, I think so. And someone's brought up the age factor of it, and the fact that he's 33 means that he was always going to be a bridge. But people then argue, well, he's not played that much, so therefore he's a 33-year-old in, say, a 27-year-old's body and stuff like that. That's not an argument I've ever been convinced by, because as a 39-year-old man myself, I can vouch for, even if you don't play in the NFL, your body does get older. So that will be happening to Geno. It's not every quarterback is going to play on forever. It's not as if you get to sort of a certain amount. It's not like a car. Players are not a car. The once it's done X amount of mileage, they start to sort of break down a little bit. You do get older with time. So I would just make that point on the age. But when you've got the age factor, you've got the cost. So Curtis was talking about this on the blog this week, and he was sort of throwing around some of the figures, the update of what he needs to hit his escalators. It seems as if the only one that he's realistically going to reach at this point is the 9 wins, because they've already got 5 wins. So the 4 wins away from him earning $2 million. So, you can pick 4 wins out of the remaining games and go, that will be enough for him to get $2 million more. That will mean he'll be on $33.1 million next season. I do not, I don't know how much the Browns quarterback is costing them. It's not very much. But when you sort of watch him play on whatever he's on, which is probably the minimum salary, it's hard to think, okay, well, Geno Smith is worth $33 million more than he is watching that performance. And when you look around the league, so his numbers in terms of touchdowns to interceptions, I'm not, there's other numbers to look at here, but it is similar to Jordan Love. It's similar to, Baker Mayfield's in a better position than Geno Smith at this point. It's similar to Sam Howell. These are the players that Geno Smith is keeping company with right now in terms of his production. Whereas at the top end, obviously, you have your Josh Allens and Patrick Mahomes. Tua's playing very well. Kirk Cousins has got numbers. Russell Wilson is what is he, 13 touchdowns now? I think this is from last week. I don't think this has been updated yet. But then you've got the Jared Goffs have got better numbers. Justin Fields even has got better numbers. So I'm looking, and bad play can affect everybody, because Jalen Hurts hasn't been playing that well after he's been paid. So there may be even some questions down the line that Philadelphia Eagles fans are having. I just think it's for me, Robbie, I don't think there's anything wrong. I don't think you are being disingenuous or unfair on Geno Smith, or just trying to cling to back up your own opinion by saying, as we sit here, he's on 9 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He could have had more interceptions. We've had multiple games now where the Seahawks offense has just ground to a halt. That this is a player that's passable for now, but really we just need to accept that he's a bridge, that he does make some really good plays, because he's a good physical talent. He was a high second-round pick. He's a good physical talent, but he is not the guy. He is not going to be the man. He is not going to lead this team to the promised land, in my opinion, Robbie. And I don't think that's unfair to make that assessment right now.
No, I think we've made that assessment pretty much. We started that assessment last year, so I don't think there's anything wrong to say it now. And he outperformed last year our expectations, and we were really happy with how he played. But we were like, okay, how do we pay him? And then we did, and I think now we have to get to the realization of the justification of paying him, kind of what you're saying, going out getting someone at like a Baker Mayfield status salary versus what he's potentially going to make now. But we definitely need to get somebody in. It doesn't help us in the short term, but we definitely need to get somebody in, to be a long-term answer. And you're right, Geno makes some pretty throws. He makes some really good throws, and like he made a couple today. But more often than not, I find myself being frustrated than I am, more than I am excited about his throws. So.
A couple of super chats have come in on this. David says, didn't Geno have some absurd interceptions expected versus interceptions thrown last year? Seeing more of the same this year, just more being picked. I can find the stats on that if you give me 2 seconds, because it was definitely. I have to search through. Here we go. So let's have a look at it. This is so the point that was raised. Hugh Millen raised this point on KJR. He said that when you look at top 10 quarterbacks, this was last season. So the top 10 quarterbacks statistically, on average, 80.6 of their turnover-worthy plays had resulted in actual turnovers. But in comparison, Geno Smith saw only 48% of his turnover-worthy plays actually result in an interception. If he had thrown the average number of turnover-worthy plays resulting in turnovers, like the rest of the QBs in the top 10, he would have had 25 interceptions last season. Even if he had thrown a well below average, 65%, so that's more than 15% below average, he still would have led the league in turnovers last year. That's pretty remarkable. He was almost half the average of his actual turnover-worthy plays resulting in turnovers compared to any of the top 10 quarterbacks on average. It's a staggering statistic. It really is. And yeah, that is a real issue, And I look again today, he had a dropped interception that could have been a pick six and a miscommunication. He could have had an interception at the end in the end zone. So real issue. Robbie, you may have to shoot here. So we'll give you a final thought. Adam and I will carry on for just a little bit longer. But have you got any final thoughts you want to? You can leave us with the positive if you want.
I'm going to leave it with the positive, because we started out with a positive. And for people that are joining now and just kind of seeing this side of Back to the Geno talk, just understand that we started out. We all cheers. We're very excited about the fact that we're 5-2.
We had a toast.
We're 5-2. We are tied for first place, second place in the NFC overall. Hey, I mean, a bad win is still a win, and in the long term, it doesn't matter how you get there as long as you get there. So maybe we'll just keep getting there all the way to the Super Bowl.
And the throwbacks were great.
And
you've got that. You were wearing the throwback. You're wearing some throwback garb today.
Yeah.
And here's another cheers to the win. To the throwbacks and to the Niners losing 3 in a row, Robbie. Thank you.
That's right. Yeah, and the Niners have lost 3 in a row. Life is good right now. Life is good.
Robbie, appreciate your time, because you've not been well.
Yeah,
so thank you,
thanks everyone.
Robbie.
Yep.
Thanks for showing up.
Bye.
Robbie's gonna bow out now. So quick final super chat. Blitzy says this team needs to draft a QB. Not every starting QB is drafted in round 1. Time to spend some day 2 picks on it. I watched Rattler versus Texan A&M. He looked very good. Blitzy, thank you for your continued support. Adam, on that point. I just think it's time for the Seahawks to I've studied the class. It's not a great deep draft class next year. I've done a horizontal board. There's still a few players that I want to reassess and determine whether I want to place them. But it feels to me like an investment in a quarterback next year would be the right thing to do. Even if Geno Smith stays, even if he stays on the current contract, even if he plays a lot better this year, Adam, and has a great second half of the season, I would still want to draft a quarterback and at least have some planning for the future at this position.
Yeah, presumably when you say that, you think that they might have to package something to move up, or do you see them having the confidence in their convictions to sit at, let's say, 24 and say, our quarterback of the future is here? There's going to be a lot of teams ahead of them that will also need quarterbacks, and it wouldn't be a shocker that if all of the ones that we would expect that you would say, look, that's the guy I want to hang my hat on for my franchise, it's there's probably going to be 12 teams before Seattle that might need a quarterback if we're picking at that range there or thereabouts.
So there's a few things to mention here. Firstly, I'm very comfortable with them. If they see somebody they think this is the guy, go up and get him. I don't care. If you need to trade up and go and get him, I think it's worth taking that chance. I think the roster's in a position where you can take that chance now. So that doesn't necessarily mean trading into the first overall pick spot, because I don't know if you'd be able to do that unless you were already picking very high, or if you wanted to give up considerable assets to do that. The team picking first overall is probably going to take Caleb Williams anyway, despite what anybody's saying online about his last 3 games. But if if they traded up to get a different player, that's fine by me. I've got no problem with that whatsoever, them doing that. I feel like it's time to consider something like that. The other thing that I would say is this quarterback class I think it's a deep quarterback class, but I don't think it's a quarterback class where you're going to see a whole bunch of top 10 picks. Look, Michael Penix has struggled when he's faced pressure the last couple of weeks. People have started putting him in top 10s in mocks. I don't think Michael Penix is going to go in the first round. I've got to be honest with you. He's not. I'm not got a first round grade on him. It's okay playing pitch and catch when you have no pressure. When he's had pressure the last couple of weeks, he's looked a little bit lost. I know he was sick at the weekend, so that maybe adds a little bit to it, and he's got some games to try and bounce back from that. And maybe I will put him back into the sort of like fringe first round grade in the next few weeks, but I don't think he is. I don't think Quinn Ewers is at this point a first round pick. He's just had a shoulder injury. Is he going to play again this year? Is he going to even declare at this stage? Who knows? Riley Leonard's got a high ankle sprain. What is he? Because they're trotting him out there. He's throwing for like 60 yards a game, playing on a high ankle sprain without his top 2 offensive linemen playing for Duke. So how can you assess him properly? I think Spencer Rattler is a player that I'd be happy taking in the first round, as is Drake May, as is Caleb Williams. That's 3 guys. At the minute, I've got players sort of in the middle rounds, your Will Howards, your Tyler Van Dykes, your Bo Nixes, your Cam Wards, people like that. Then sort of behind them, Jordan Travis, Jaden Daniels, Michael Pratt, that I think that you could invest in so that you actually pick a quarterback, maybe day 2, day 3, early day 3, so that you're investing in somebody, but you're not necessarily having to move them and do it. I just want to see them take a chance on somebody at this point, Adam. Bring somebody into that building to work on a cheap rookie deal, because it feels like they're overdue to do that at this point. And Geno Smith is not nailing this down. He is not saying, I am a top. People keep saying you can't argue he's a top 10 quarterback. He ain't playing like a top 10 quarterback right now. I'm sorry, he just isn't.
And you're not going to spend $37 million on him, I don't think. And people talk about if people think we're disingenuous in our assertions about Geno, or we're confirming our priors. Rob doesn't send around pre-show meeting notes where we say, look, Adam, you're going to back up Geno today, and Robbie, you're going to try and slag him off, and then we'll have a debate. Like, all we're doing, I think, is just talking honestly about a sports team that we love watching. And we're just analyzing what we think we're seeing. Now, Geno Smith's getting paid 5 times more this year than last year. I think roughly that's how the contract works out. So I think it's perfectly fair to be more critical this year than we were last year. That doesn't seem like that seems natural, right? If someone gets 5 times what they were getting, the interceptions are not as, it was cute last year. It was a great story. It's not such an interesting story or such a rags to riches story when you're already on the 35 million. And so, I think we're just analyzing what we think we're seeing in Geno. And I don't think I've seen enough so far this year to want to do it again next year, especially as you're basically re-upping the same contract, with a bit of interest every year. They have easy outs. And I think you've seen enough in almost the first half of this year to know it's probably not the thing that's worth pursuing. So yeah, let's try something. One thing I would ask when it comes to your processing, because I don't know this, and maybe the listeners don't know this, but when you say you don't have a first round grade on someone, is that if you're jumbling up every player that's ever been and slotting them into a mock draft that you wouldn't give them a first round pick? Or does that just mean that under any circumstances, the value of a first round pick is not worth putting on this player? Because presumably, we know that, that every year you get different levels of quality of the player coming through in the first round.
It's probably one of the biggest misconceptions with the draft. And it's probably from the mock draft culture that you have this, that people don't view the draft probably in the way that they should do, which is, I think, the real benefit of a horizontal board, because you can actually see who players who will go in the first round versus players who probably deserve to go in the first round. because there are a whole bunch of players every year, Adam, that go in the first round because you have to take somebody, because you can't just say, well, there's no first round there, so I'll just, I don't know, trade this for next year's pick. And I have to say, when I'm looking at my board right now, I've got it up on my screen, I only have 3 players at the minute with legit first round grades. And that's ridiculous. I've never had as few as that. And I've only got a clump of players, Drake May, Spencer Rattler, Roma Dunze, Xavier Leggett, Tyler Guiton, Aluminium Fashanu, Amarius Mims, Chop Robinson, who I'm kind of 50-50 on, and Jason Newton in sort of that sort of what I call fringe first round, which really means players I'm happy to take in the first round, but probably don't have that legit, or, I'm going to run to the podium for these guys in the first round grade. So with the quarterbacks, that's quite a small pool from which I'd be saying, I'm comfortable taking this guy in the first round. And that's probably why I would probably be open to being aggressive for one of the guys that I actually have in that range. But it's difficult. I mean, there were points, Adam, in that first quarter, and this is something I did want to talk to you about, where I was kind of thinking, do you know what? Maybe I'd be open to like a big trade before Tuesday, because they're playing really well and everything's motoring along, and I'd probably quite like to see them add a really talented player. I just get a sense that Baltimore will make a trade for Chase Young or Montez Sweat this week, and everyone will go, it's amazing. They'll get him for a second round pick and they'll play really well, and the Ravens may win the AFC. And I wish that we would have done that. But then as the game went on, I'm thinking, I don't want them to go anywhere near any trades on Tuesday, because this looks like a season where they just need to see what the hell happens, keep their stock and plan accordingly. And the other thing that's really important to stress here, Adam, is there's no quick fix with this. It's so hard to find a quarterback. Everyone should acknowledge that. I acknowledge that. I'm not saying that just drafting someone is automatically going to provide a solution here. I think you just have to be honest about where we are as a franchise. We have a good young team that lacks elite blue chip players, because we've not been able to draft a Nick Bosa or a Myles Garrett or an Aaron Donald, and that's fine. You shouldn't be expected to necessarily have a player like that. We've got a good young team with some really good players. But in order to take the next step, I think we're going to need better play calling, better quarterback, probably another difference maker on the defensive line. Would you go along with that? Or is there anything else that you think we need?
It's a really hard one to say, because there's not games that I'm watching where I'm looking at the same thing over and over again during the game, thinking that needs to be sorted. Today they have amazing moments of pass rush. They have good moments in the secondary. The linebackers look pretty good. The pass catching looks good. The running game looks okay. The quarterbacking looks good. And then all of a sudden, one part of it doesn't. And I wonder if, you mentioned being a good young team, and I wonder if perhaps this isn't to sort of denigrate ourselves, but if maybe we just need to accept that sometimes following a young team, you do end up in these situations where you get quarters of wild overachievement. Really, I mean, that first quarter was phenomenal, and you probably get to a point where you're thinking, well, they're doing it now, why don't you just keep doing that and win the game 43-12? But you forget that you're supporting a really young team here who are going to have fluctuations. And yeah, like there's individual players that you'd love to see. I thought they were talking about Carl. That's annoying. His name's escaped me, from the Jets, defensive lineman
Carl Lawson.
Yes, who was going to be shopped, and there was a report that he was going to join Seattle. And yeah, like maybe that'd be great. But then if Taylor and Maffei and Brooks coming through are going to have such at times dominating effect on the line, is that necessarily something you want to plunge a lot of resources into it? And I just don't know, because there's sometimes where I'm feeling that it's a really hard team to analyze because they are so young, and it's just difficult to say what you have when you are packed full of youth, because you don't really know what you're going to get on a week-to-week basis. You're not even going to get linear improvement, as we're seeing all over the place. Woolen, his performances fluctuate a little bit, but we know he has incredible potential. But you wouldn't say he's a negative if he has a bad game. It just happens. He has a bad game because he's a young player. And so I think any trade that they put a lot of resources into, like you could sign anyone that could probably fit into the team. But I don't know, from the value element of it, I don't see like one trade that they could make this year making the difference between them being a divisional round team and a Super Bowl team. I really just feel like it's the players performing on the day is going to be the difference in almost every game. And that's really unhelpful from an analytical standpoint, I know, and that's probably not helpful in terms of judging the team. But I sometimes feel we have to just look at this against just group and say they're just so young that you're going to get what you're going to get on a Sunday.
Yeah, I think it's not an unfair observation. I'll tell you what I'd be really interested in them just keeping the pigs. And I want to ask you about certain players because there's been a bit of chatter, and you mentioned Carl Lawson there, and I want to ask you about a couple of other players as well. But I'd be really interested in them just keeping the pigs this week. They brought in Frank Clark to replace Uchenna and Wosu. Keep your pigs. I know people keep reacting to Spencer Rattler. Look, I have watched all of Rattler's games this year, and I've watched all of the games I felt like I needed to watch last year. And I hated him when he was at Oklahoma. Like when people were mocking him in the top 5, I was like, there's no way this guy's a top 5 pick. I don't know where this is coming from. He was throwing it into double coverage. He was just trusting his arm. He wasn't even making reads. He was careless, reckless. He looked like a hothead on the sideline. He looked awful. And then he got benched for Caleb Williams, and he had to transfer, and he has completely turned his career around. So that's a positive aspect in one regard. Adam, no one's talking about him because behind the South Carolina O-line, they're giving up more sacks than any other offensive line in college football. Like they are last. There is not. And think how many teams are in college football. We're talking well over 100 teams here. South Carolina's offensive line is the worst in college football statistically. They give up more sacks than anybody else. They give up 4 sacks again at the weekend, 10 TFLs, numerous pressures, numerous hits. Awful. He's not turning the ball over. Most of his turnovers are when they're 14 points down and he's throwing a chuffing Hail Mary with the last throw of the game. He's making progressions. He's playing on schedule. He's making key decisions. He can make plays with his legs. He's extremely creative in the pocket. He will manipulate the pocket. He will get out of the pocket and throw on the run. He's got elite arm strength. He's got amazing arm talent. He plays. Honestly, I mean this so serious about this. He is a poor man's Patrick Mahomes. He is so talented. There is a reason why people were projecting him in the top 5 2 years ago before it collapsed at Oklahoma. He's become that player now. And no one realizes it because he's playing for a really bad South Carolina team. But he is there. Take a chance on him. Take a chance on him. Draft him. He is worth it. And I don't know whether they will or not. I still think that John might like Quinn Ewers. But I think he'll like Spencer Rattler as well. So I'm just saying, I'd be very interested in taking a chance on him. And frankly, if that was in the late first round, so be it. Don't care. Super chats, and then we'll just finish with a bit of trade talk, if that's okay, Adam. So this one from Maurice says, with Geno struggling, should we not focus on the run game? K9 and Charbonnet look legit. 1-2 punch, and Geno can then lean on play action. That's what I would do. That is exactly what I would do. And I hope that they start doing that. I hope they learn from this game. But they keep making the same error. I don't know why they don't just lean on the running back. So they've spent 2 second-round picks on. Carl with a super sticker. Thank you, Carl. Much appreciated for that. And the other one that I was going to get to was David. Sorry, David, we've kind of got sidetracked with that. Fury and Ngannou, is it? I don't know. I did not watch the boxing last night. I'm guessing you didn't either, Adam.
I was actually working last night. I was keeping in touch with it just because I'm a very fair weather boxing fan. Not that I think you can necessarily call that calamity boxing. So yeah, very strange goings on in the old boxing world, I think.
I have covered many nights of boxing during my career. I've been at world title fights from Sheffield to London to Miami. I've been all over the world watching boxing. There was never in a million years was I paying to watch that load of rubbish yesterday. From my friends who did, they seem to suggest that Fury was very fortunate to come away with a win. So just stop messing about. Let's have Fury fight Usyk. Let's have Anthony Joshua fight Wilder, and then come on and you can have my £25. Until then, get in the sea. Right, trades talk. Oh, actually, there's one more from Blitzy. He says, Adam said something about the linebackers playing well. It triggered a question. because it's true they did play well. So I have to ask, how good is Bobby Wagner? Adam, you will not understand the context of that. We have a little joke on the Seahawks Shop blog about that, and every press conference there's a question that is essentially, how good is Bobby Wagner? But I have to say, look, as somebody who was very skeptical of that signing, I do think Bobby Wagner has played better than I expected. In coverage, there were clear issues there. When he's going forward and hitting the hole, I also think when at the second level, he's not as aggressive as he perhaps was when he was younger. But hitting the line of scrimmage, Adam, stopping runs, being forceful in that regard, he's been very good. What have your impressions? And I think Jordan Brooks has played well as well.
Yeah, I think Bobby has been good, but even more than that. And I know, yeah, we rolled our eyes a little bit when they were talking about Bobby's intangibles and what he was bringing to the team. But I think I'm going to give my eyes a rest, and I'm going to stop rolling them in the back of my head when I hear a player talk about coming back, because so many of them are saying it. And even like Frank Clark, who seemed like a good Seahawk, who got traded away and then went on to pastures new, like a million players do, across every season. And I don't think he was just saying, like, I always wanted to come back and play for Seattle again, just for a witty or, a nice little, sentence to throw away in a press conference, because he doesn't have to say that. He's got nothing to prove. He's got rings. He's won all he needs to do. Seattle obviously do have something special when it comes to the way they are able to integrate, reintegrate, keep players feeling part of the system. And, if Bobby's mere presence has helped by 3 or 4%, I'm not going to roll my eyes at that anymore, because they're obviously doing something that works. And, I've been a big, critic of Pete Carroll and questioned some of the stuff that he's done. And I don't think unfairly. I only tried to be genuine with my criticism or whatnot. But I don't know. There's just enough there that it's very hard to completely dismiss outright what they're doing from a building and a culture standpoint. And if people like Bobby Wagner are important to that, then great, bring it on, because it's working.
Fair play. And I agree with your sentiment there, Adam. If there's any more super chats, get them in. We are going to wrap up soon. But I am intrigued, Adam, by the whole trade market thing. I think the NFL's desperate to try and create their own version of the baseball trade deadline where things actually happen. Usually it's quite quiet, but tomorrow will be a significant day because it's the day before the trade deadline. So teams like Washington, for example, were said to be waiting to see what they did today against the Eagles before making a decision. And others now will be reflecting, like the Broncos, for example, might be less inclined to trade people after finally ending their streak of like 179 games without beating the Kansas City Chiefs. And they've finally done it today. But then other teams like the Commanders might be more inclined to trade. So how would you play this week? A few people were asking about Carl Lawson. It seems like a pretty spurious link, this. It's not really from a source that's, it's not a Schefter or somebody like that or a Glazer where this has come from about Carl Lawson. But how would you? I'm not big on that, because for me he doesn't tilt the field in any way. He's just another body. So if you were able to bring him in for a swap of 6th rounders or something, I'd be like, well, yeah, whatever, bring him in. But to me, it doesn't feel like I wouldn't want to trade anything of any real value for him as a rental to come in just to try and give a bit of extra juice in the rotation for the pass rush while also probably holding Derek Hall back. I'd probably just rather play Derek Hall, who you spent a top 40 pick on. So I'm not sure that's something I'd want to necessarily do. When Jonathan Allen's name suddenly popped up as I was like, yes, but then apparently there's no chance of that, because Jonathan Allen for me is the perfect player for Seattle's interior D-line. But apparently they're not interested in trading him. But I'd go hard on him because I think he's very, very good. Maybe that wasn't the best choice of words to describe how I'd react to getting Jonathan Allen, but I would be interested in bringing him to Seattle. And, look, Montez Sweat and Chase Young, Adam, are playing brilliantly and a good age, highly productive this year. Price may be at a discount because of the fact the contracts are running out. That's the kind of thing that I think an opportunistic team would go for. So, how do you want the Seahawks to do anything? Do you want them to be aggressive? Do you want them to be opportunistic? how do you feel about the trade deadline? Because at the minute, it's a lot of talk and not a lot of action, but it may well hot up in the next 24 hours.
I feel, and actually this links quite nicely with Jeffrey's super chat, that it's quite an awkward time in the season for Seattle because we don't really know what we've got going forward this season and further than that, I don't think. And if it was a couple of weeks later and you'd played Baltimore and maybe you're 7-3 or whatever after 10 games, you could look at it and think, right, it's go time. But I don't know, assuming they're not going to do anything stupid like offer 2 first rounders and a 3rd round pick for someone again who also needs to be paid. I am always struck by how relatively cheap, in inverted commas, a lot of these well-known players are. Like, didn't Ramsey went for like a 3rd round pick to Miami from the Rams or something? Not the sort of price you'd expect to be paying for household names. So if there is someone like a Chase Young that you can get for a 4th and maybe a swap of 5th or 6th picks, and yeah, do it. I mean, that may be wildly unrealistic. Again, I don't feel like I've got any sort of barometer of what a player costs these days when it comes to trades. Obviously the contract does change things quite dramatically, but there's not that many teams that are obvious sellers, and so it just feels like it's quite an early time to have the deadline. Now, I don't think Roger's listening now and he's going to necessarily change the deadline to 3 weeks' time, which I'd like, as helpful as that would be. But assuming they're not going to change the deadline overnight, I think it's a tricky one because I don't really know how Seattle should approach it by way of, we've got so much to build on for next year, but then, if San Francisco fall off a cliff like they're looking to do it, are the Seahawks any worse than the 3rd best team in the NFC right now? And if you said that, would you want to strengthen and try and vaunt yourself into a championship level team? I think it's really tricky. What would you do?
I would prefer them to be restrained and keep their picks, I think, because on the one hand, it sounds great, Adam, because they've had 2 really good drafts, and the idea of having a really big draft class again and trying to do that again really appeals to me. And that's not because I'm I'd write about the draft or anything like that. I don't care. I want the draft. Writing about the draft means nothing to me. What I want is the Seahawks to be great. So that's my investment. If the Seahawks traded away the next 10 first-round picks, but could win a Super Bowl within the next 10 years, I would take that right now. I would take that deal because that is what it's all about for me. So, but I do think that they've drafted well enough to submit one to be. I want them to keep the option open to be aggressive because I am thinking quarterback next year. At the same time, there are players out there, Adam, that if I hear that they've traded a 3rd round pick for Montez Sweat tomorrow, I will not be upset with that. I will be happy. I would be happy with a 2nd round pick for Jonathan Allen, maybe a 2nd and a 3rd. I would be, if they pulled off a surprise, like I thought the Quandre Diggs trade was a really good trade because it was a 5th round pick for a player who, okay, maybe didn't fit in Detroit, but we all knew of Quandre Diggs. It was good value. It improved the team. Can they make another move like that? Somebody for like a throwaway pick who can come in. If they do something like that, I'm all in on a move like that. It's just hard to know who that kind of player is. What I don't want them to do is spend a 3rd round pick on Carl Lawson. That's too much for what he is. I wouldn't want them to spend a 3rd round pick on Josh Uche, who gets linked with the Seahawks. He's the New England pass rusher. He's just a pass rush specialist. He's had 1 good year in 4. I feel like we've got a pass rush specialist in Darrell Taylor. I don't want to spend a lot of picks at our high pick on somebody like that. So I'm looking for value. So I'm open-minded about it, but I'm leaning towards keep your picks, keep your options open for the draft next year. Their financial situation is pretty crap. So, adding players that you then have to re-sign is going to be really difficult. So I'm comfortable with them just bringing in Frank Clark and nothing else personally, but open for any opportunity.
They gave up a 7th round pick for Carlos Dunlap, didn't they?
Yes. Like a move like that would be fine.
Yeah. Like there will be someone out there that can probably affect the team probably as much as Lawson can, whose long-term situation may not be the best, but you probably don't need to be thinking too long-term when it comes to trades at this point. If you're trading for someone, for my money, it should be because you think you can win this year, and that's all you should be banking on. So yeah, if you need to toss away a late round pick on someone that's 32, 33 that can do something, then I'd be all for that. I think.
Can I just? I'm sorry. This is a complete tangent. I was going on the NFL standings just to find if there's any teams that might be sort of very willing sellers, and I just noticed that the Cincinnati Bengals are bottom of the AFC North. That's crazy. They're in last place in their division. They're tied with the Steelers and the Browns, but they are officially at the minute placed fourth in the AFC North, which is pretty incredible. And they've beaten Seattle and the Niners. That was the last thing I want to talk about, actually, the Niners. So looking down the list, yeah, I mean, the Patriots might be willing sellers, and the Giants. So there's definitely at least one player for the Giants that I'd be interested in. I think that's really it. I don't think the Cardinals will trade as anybody. So Leonard Williams is on too much money, but I do like he's out of contract. I'm not sure the Giants want to remove talented players, Adam. I think they're very much in a survival mode for the coach and the GM right now, and kind of want to keep people invested in them. And I think that tanking at this point, when you're tied to Daniel Jones, would be a bad move for them. But Leonard Williams would look good in Seattle if you can't get to Jonathan Allen, which I was really disappointed that that's not going to be viable. And then there is the Patriots. Apparently, the Patriots are very open to sort of moving anybody at this point. I'm looking at their roster. I can't see anybody.
What does Matthew Judon make?
Is he injured at the minute?
Did he get injured last week? Maybe he did.
I think he's out for some weeks. Let me have a look. He suffered a torn bicep versus the Cowboys. So he's going to be out for a while. I mean, a torn bicep's like a torn pec, isn't it, to an extent? You kind of end up being
I've actually got some good exercises for biceps if you're interested.
Oh,
so
great.
If you scroll back about an hour, then some guys were talking about bicep curls and hammer curls on this very thread. Who would have thought the super chat would all come home to roost?
I think basically what I'm coming to with this trade stuff, Adam, is I really just, unless they can get a really proven player who can come in as a rental for a 6th or a 5th or a 7th or something like that, then I'm out on trades. If they could get someone like Montez Sweat or Chase Young for a 3rd, I'm okay with it. I was never a big Chase Young fan coming into the NFL, but he was a 2nd overall pick. Adam, he was meant to be essentially what Nick Bosa is going to be. He's got a number of sacks this year. I'm comfortable with them taking a chance on somebody like that, because if he ended up being your Nick Bosa, how good would that be? And I can just see him going to Baltimore and playing as bloody next week and actually getting a couple of sacks and being like, oh, for God's sake, why is that? Could we not have got in on that? So yeah, that's where I am.
So here's a mega left field one, and it would never happen.
Ooh, here we go.
What do you reckon Aaron Donald would cost someone?
Oh my God. Well, listen, the Rams should consider it. I think it'd cost a 1st rounder.
Really?
I mean, it's hard because he's flirted with. Well, there's two things. He's flirted with retirement, and he turns 33 in May, so he's not young, and he's talked about the end. But if you were a contender, like if you were, I'm trying to think of somebody. Bengals,
Cincinnati, yeah,
Bills. Why wouldn't you want Aaron Donald at this point? If that was the difference, like the Bills look pretty crap, don't they? They kind of they're a bit like us. They're kind of muddling through certain games. If you put Aaron Donald on their team, they might be a Super Bowl favorite. Would that be worth a 1st round pick? Probably. I don't know whether Aaron Donald would want to go play in Buffalo at this stage in his career. I don't know. It's a hard one, because what is the value for a player like that? But the Rams should be considering all things like that, because they peaked in week 1, so they are not there. The other thing that concerns me a little bit, Adam, is that the Niners will do something great tomorrow, because they've lost 3 in a row, so they might be quite active, because they're very much we need to strike while the iron's hot. That's why they signed Javon Hargrave, and they've lost 3 in a row. Want to finish with them. You mentioned Jeffrey had sent a super chat in. If they move the trade deadline to week 10, there'll be 2 lost teams that would dump 1st rounders for missing pieces. Feel like it's too early. I think it's a fair point. I think a lot of people feel they could stretch it out to week 10. But I must admit, there is a little bit part of me that's quite excited that tomorrow we'll kind of know what's going on. That we'll have some, like Albert Breer was talking about. He reported the Seahawks were looking for help, that they were looking to move Darrell Taylor and then bring in another pass rusher even before Nwosu's injury. So maybe the fact that Darrell Taylor got a sack today, they can convince some team to take him for a 6th or something, and they can maybe send something to somebody else, and maybe that will be when Carl Lawson comes in, if that's what's going to happen. Or maybe the Seahawks will go, do you know what? We're better off just, it's cheaper, or it's better just to stay with Darrell Taylor.
He's had a good few weeks.
Out. Yeah, well, he's better today. Well, he got a sack today. It's his run defense, though, isn't it? That's the big problem with him. So we are first in the NFC West, Adam. top of the table. So the sort of the thing I'm thinking is, what do we think of the Niners at this point? Because the Niners look like, if you'd have said to me 3 weeks ago, for your life, who you're putting on money on, who you're putting your mortgage on being in the Super Bowl, I would have said the Niners. Absolutely. They look like the most balanced team, the best team. It was an absolute no-brainer that they were going to be the top dog in the NFC. They've lost three games in a row, Adam. This isn't just one bad result now. 3 defeats in a row. They've not just lost to the Bengals. They've lost 31-17, and that includes a missed field goal by the Bengals and a fumble in the red zone. I didn't see much of the second half. They were both in the first half. That could have been a 40-odd point to 17 loss today for the Niners. That's off the back of losing to the Browns, who we've just seen. And they were pushed around by Minnesota on Monday Night Football. I stayed up and watched that game. They were not good there. They are the biggest challengers they are the team, they're the kings. They're the ones that you have to dethrone to win this division. The Rams and the Cardinals are not going to be in this conversation. So what do we feel about the Niners right now? Are the Seahawks the best team in the division? Are the Niners just having a very unusual slump? Do we fully expect them to come roaring back because they're such a talented team? What are the Niners right now?
Yeah, I don't think Debo's completed, and he got injured in the first loss, didn't he? And then he's been out for the previous 2. And he's obviously, such a switchblade player like him. He's just a remarkable player, and someone that with the focus that Shanahan does put on the run game with his offense, you could see that was always going to be a big loss. Perhaps not sort of losing to Minnesota level big, but the Bengals are a proper team, and with Burrow fully healthy, they look like a serious. I think they're probably my pick for the AFC at this stage, the Bengals. So I wouldn't read too much necessarily into that loss, albeit 3 in a row does suggest there's something going on there. And I think the Purdy thing is not dissimilar to what I feel about Geno from a Seattle standpoint, that it's nothing tangible, but if you have that sort of sharp intake of breath every time your quarterback is having a drop back, it does permeate through stuff. And I'm sure that there are other players that are starting to think, oh my God, what if Brock, that's it? Like, he had his run and that's it. And, I'm sure they're going to try and not think like that, but it's human nature that you would start to doubt things. If you are the last pick in the draft, enough teams have a chance on you to pick you enough times that there must have been something wrong that everyone saw a number of times. And I don't think that, if it was a first round pick that had his run, had a few bad games, then no one would think anything of it because, well, that's just teething problem. But with his pick in the draft and people talking about it over and over again, these aren't tangible things, but I just think that is the sort of stuff that permeates through human nature. As resolute as you think you want to be and how you talk, you can talk all the talk you want. If your quarterback starts doing some of this silly, weird stuff that Purdy has been doing, it's going to get into the heads of the players. And, I think we know full well it only takes a couple of % drop off in anything to make a market difference in the NFL. And they're just going through that right now, I think. And whether or not they make a change or otherwise, it's good to have a little seed of doubt planted in their mind, because that is something that could really bring the whole house of cards down on that side of things.
I mean, with Brock Purdy, these are his statistics, Adam, in the last 3 games: 3 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. And this is a player who didn't turn the ball over. He didn't lose a game. Like, he had it was just win. Like all the statistics going into the Cleveland game were like I don't think he lost one regular season game or none or something like that.
The only loss was the championship game that he played like 10 minutes.
Yeah. So that was all the sort of a big thing. And now they've lost 3 in a row. And the pressure's on for them because they're in a different place to the Seahawks. Like the Seahawks are in year 2. Yes, some fans have kind of decided that, this is it. This is the time or whatever. But it's not really. They're in year 2 of a build. The Niners, they've tried to sort of, they're in, George Kittle's not young anymore. Deebo Samuel's not young anymore. Trent Williams is nearer the end now. These are their key players. Nick Bosa's suddenly on a big contract. He's not on a rookie contract anymore. Fred Warner's not on a rookie contract anymore. And he's going to be starting to get up in age a little bit. Brandon Ayuk will soon need to be paid or replaced. So, Javon Hargrave's not young. So they've got they're in a win now mode and they've lost 3 in a row. And I don't know what is their next game?
It's a bye. I've just looked it up. Really annoying. They've got a bye week, then Jaguars on the road, and then Tampa Bay at home.
You say that's a bad thing. I mean, just think though, Adam, the Niners fans are going to be absolutely chewing on this for 2 weeks. That's quite funny.
That is true. I mean, it does add an extra little wrinkle to our Baltimore game next week, because if we can go a win ahead of them with a massive win in Baltimore, and make no mistake, that would be up there with probably a top 5 regular season Pete Carroll win, I would say, if they can go to Baltimore and win next week. For so many different reasons. If we come back, if the Niners come back after their bye week, a game behind the Seahawks in the loss column, the win column, off the back of 3 defeats, that's going to start, creeping in, especially we have to play them twice in the next month as well.
Completely. And Jacksonville's not an easy game for them next. That's a tough game. What are the Jags now? Are they like 6-2 or something like that?
And the Jaguars look like their preseason expectations. Like they're looking the part again.
So the Jaguars have lost to the Chiefs, which is losing to the Chiefs, and that was after the Chiefs had lost in week 1 as well. And the Jaguars could easily have won that game, and then they lost to Houston, which was a huge surprise. But then they've beaten Atlanta, Buffalo, Indianapolis, New Orleans, Pittsburgh, all fairly convincing wins. They're 6-2, and the Niners have to go to Jacksonville. So that's not easy off the back of a bye. And then they play Tampa Bay, which you would expect them to win, but who knows? And then it's the game that I'm going to be at, which is the Thanksgiving game against Seattle. So that's another reason why this win is so important, Adam, because if they'd have gone to Baltimore 4-3 with the prospect of being 500, and you've not capitalized at all, have you, on the Niners 3-game losing streak? Now you go to Baltimore with a very different perspective. Can you go to 6-2? Can you make a statement? Can you show to be actually one of the better teams in the NFC? That is the huge challenge next week, and I'm really looking forward to that game. And that's the great thing. They found a way to win. You spend next week looking forward to the next game, not regretting what happened on the Sunday, not having all of the arguments and everything like that. And I still think that as we've done today, we've had a decent conversation about some of the flaws within the team while still celebrating a win. So thank you to everybody who's watched that. Adam, have you got any final thoughts?
No, I think, so much better to get to talk about bad stuff on the back of a win as opposed to a moan-a-thon for an hour, which probably would have been a bit cathartic, but quite depressing to go to bed on. So at least we've righted the wrongs and onwards.
Well, I've had a good Sunday. So I had a little dabble, £2, Adam, on Jalen Hurts, Tua, and who was the third player? Dak Prescott to score 3 touchdowns. 66-1, couple of quid. They managed to do it. So there we go. That got off the night. That night it got off to it. It was the best £2 I've spent in a long time. So, and then the Seahawks won. So great. And the Niners lost. So a perfect double. So onwards
and Big Angie's still top of the league. So what have we got to worry about?
And Spurs are still top of the league. There you go. Thank you to everybody who's watched. The numbers were great for the live stream today. Thank you for all of the super chats. Massively appreciate it. It really helps the channel. It helps me pay all the bills that I have to pay for hosting rights and everything like that, and equipment. So much appreciated to everybody who has chipped in with that. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you don't miss a video. And SeahawksDraftBlog.com for more analysis. We'll have some draft talk this week. We'll have some Seahawks talk, and Curtis's articles are always fantastic as well. Make sure you check those out. Adam, plug your podcast. You had a fantastic guest. I had a little listen on the way walking the dog earlier. You had a fantastic guest this week, but give a plug to your podcast.
Yeah, so I host another UK Seahawkers podcast called the Pedestrian Podcast. Stuart and I have been going for about 6 or so years. We get some great guests on, and this last week we had Adam Amin on, who has just finished commentating on the Seahawks game today. And we try not to focus on sort of review preview. It's a bit different, we'd like to think, and I think we've got a really good insight into the life of a multi-sport commentator, which is wild, I have to say, and the preparation that goes into it is quite incredible. So if you can give it a listen, we'd be hugely appreciative. Thank you very much.
There we go. Yeah, definitely check it out. And as I mentioned, SeahawksDraftBlog.com for more analysis on the Seahawks and the draft. And like the video, leave a comment. Those things really help the channel. Thank you to everybody who's watched. Thank you to everybody who has given a super chat. And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.